Okay, I'm Henia Weit. I live in Los Angeles. The address is 9514 Cresta Drive, Los Angeles, California. I was born in Poland, and I am a survivor, which I went through to the Holocaust. And I was the youngest of the 9 children in the family, my parents. When the war broke out in September, the Germans came in for a short time in our area where we lived. It was Sambor, the city Sambor near Lvov, Lemberg. They were about 6 weeks, the Germans with us. And then after a while, the Russians came in. And the Russians were with us for 2 years, divided Poland, and we were with them for 2 years. When the war broke out with Russian Germany, then, as you know, the Germans came in everywhere, and we were under the German occupation, and we were...
Mrs. White, could you tell us a little bit about your town, what it was like before the war? Tell us a little bit about what your town was like before the war.
Sambor was a very nice town, about 30,000 residents, and was about 8,000 to 9,000 families, Jewish families, which my parents lived near, I would say, 2 kilometers away from Sambor, because my mother's parents had a very large farm. And after a while, when my grandparents passed away, my father decided to live in the city. And we had a store, like this textile business, and it was about, I would say, about 15 or more years, which my father was in this kind of business. When the Germans came in, they took away completely our possessions. The store was liquidated, all the valuables were taken away, and we accepted it slowly. And then...
was that during the 6 weeks before the Russians?
No, that was after the Russians, when the Germans already came to take it over. After.
What was it like during those first 6 weeks with the Germans?
They took everyone to work, which I was a minor, but which I was left alone for the time being. And my brothers, they were family men, they were taken, especially to the prisons, to clean up, because when the Russians left, they, as far as I can recall, they took the prisoners and choked them with tapes on their mouth, and even, I remember telling me, or rather talking about that, they took crushed glass, stuffing them with, the Russians did it, in their mouth and taping their mouth. They sort of died in the prison. So the Jews, they ordered the Jews, especially the young men, to take them out from the prison and dig big graves and put them into the graves.
Which prisons were these?
The Jewish...
The Jewish prisons?
The Jewish and the Christians.
And
the Christians together. So after a while, this settled. That was cleaned up. Then they ordered forced labor, which...
this is the Germans now.
The Germans. The Germans ordered forced labor, like my brothers went for the railroad, working types, put them completely away from the home, from their families. And this was going on for several months until this was finished. So finally, after this was already finished, we didn't know where they're taking them, separated them from the wives and the children, and they took them away. They told them that they are signing them for another assignment, working assignment.
Your brothers were already married before the war?
Everyone was married before the war. Two of my brothers have 3 children each, and my sister had 3 children. And when they separated the families, they didn't come back. So the wives remained with the children. After several months, then they starting to take the wives and the children, telling us again that they're going to take the children to a certain area, camp, whatever you call it, to send them to school, and the wives are going to work. Mm-hmm. We accepted that again. Presumably this was the case. Mm-hmm. We didn't hear about Auschwitz. We didn't hear about any gas chambers that time. We didn't know a thing about it. There was one summer, they came, for instance, the Gestapo came, they needed a certain quota. For instance, having, let's say, 500 people for labor. And after they came to the main, who are called a Judenrat. I don't know if you understand what means a Judenrat. Somebody above who can present the people, rather to gather the people.
Like a federation.
Like a federation, to gather and to deliver the people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So naturally we had kapos. Mm-hmm. Already established that the capo, he will deliver this many people, or rather families. Mm-hmm. Then this was their job, assigned to them, which they like it if they didn't like it, which we will never know. But they were assigned as a policeman to bring them, gather them in one circle. Mm-hmm. This is where my sister, one of my sisters, and one of my brothers, this what started, my personal family started. My brothers, I didn't see them. Two of them, I did never see them again. And as I can recall, that one of my brothers were trying to come, at least to beg of one of the capos, the police, say, look, at least let my family know that I'm going somewhere which I don't know where. At least let them know. So instead, to let them know, so the Ukrainian police stepped in. And they beat him to the extent that he never could get up anymore. Because I wasn't there at this time, but this was, we were told later. They hauled him away, I don't know where and what. And naturally my sisters went away with the children. And this was already starting, the time was starting already to put them on the wagons, floated like kettles or like herrings that they couldn't even breathe, and put them away. Probably we were already 2 weeks later, we were finding out slowly that they were taken to the concentration camps.
How did you find that out?
By people who were aware of it already. They were already alert what was going on.
And what was happening to you during this period of time?
This period of time, I was still with my parents. Mm-hmm. And after a while, after let's say a month or 2, they decided to take us out from our home. Mm-hmm. A Ukrainian couple decided to have our home. Mm-hmm. And the police naturally helped them. And they pushed us out, and we went to live on somebody's home where it was gathered us about 800 people and 800 families who were capable of working, labor, I mean, ground, to cultivate, to work. And the name of this place was near Sambor, about 7 kilometers away. And in English, I think it is called, in Europe, they call it dziedzic, inheritor. You know what means a dziedzic? It's like a hire.
It's a range.
It's a range, but it's extremely big, by the thousands and thousands of acres, like a baron or this kind of
an estate.
Estate. Mm-hmm. And that was, was a very famous person who actually was running from generation to generation and inheriting this kind of land. And we were gathered, let's say, from a couple villages around Sambar, and some of them had the privilege to have this kind of a job, because they felt if they will work long enough that they will be able to survive. We had the privilege because my brother, who actually I will tell you later about him, one of my brothers, had a connection from this Harris that if we had special bands, and number A is the yellow one. Mm-hmm. And if we are able to work in this place, we will be able to survive. So we were among those people. So when we were working there, and we didn't have no more home, so they took us in a home where another Jewish family lived, also a small rancher, well, like let's say a good farmer, a big farmer. And they took him away, the Germans took him away and shot him, so the home was there. So there were about, I would say 15 of us living in this home. And my parents were there, myself and my sister, and my twin sister and brother. Three, and my parents is 5. And there was others in the same home. So we shared. And we were working from 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening, just to have the food and a quart of milk a day that my mother, that milked the 20 cows, what she was assigned of milking the 20 cows for 1 quart of milk to be able to feed us. And the rest, whatever we earned, what we a little bit stole, a potato here and a potato there. And certain things, what we still had some valuables, what exchanged for a piece of bread, which kept us this for, I would say, for 8 months. Mm-hmm. And in the end of almost 1942, we were still working on the field. That was November. There was still taking out beets for the cattle. By the way, and there was already a German, what do you call that? A hire. I don't know if this is a pronounced hire or hire, which it was like a baron. Mm-hmm. But he took it over the whole
overseer.
The whole area. He took out the whole where the people worked, and the whole thing, the whole farm, the big farm. In fact, they were not bad people. They did not harm us at all. Mm-hmm. And by the end, when this was already finishing, and we had sort of rumors that they intend to open the ghetto in Sambar. And we were just hesitating, what's going to happen to us? What shall we do now? So there was still about 500 of us. And I was working together in the fields, together with everyone. I was probably the youngest. And I had the man who actually was above, who was the trustee, the trustee from the German. Right. By his name, I still remember, his name was Beck. Mm-hmm. And he had 2 daughters, which I attended before Nazis went to school with them. And one Thursday, I remember like today, afternoon, one of the daughters, her name I still remember, Donna, says to me, and she said to her father, she said, it would be nice if we take Henia home for dinner. It was already a chilled November afternoon. And he said, yes, by all means. In fact, even though he was endangering himself, but he felt still he knows us for so many years, and why not? So that was a Thursday. And I went with them to their home, which they lived in those mansions, because, I cannot even imagine how many homes were tremendously, it's like, the rich people live in the barons and this kind of homes they possessed. Naturally, the Germans had already took it over. And I had dinner. It was a Thursday. I had dinner with them, and everything was quiet. And she said to her father, she said, it's getting late. We don't want to send Henia home now. Why don't you keep her overnight? And then from here, she will go with you to work on the field. And then, we'll be again united with everyone. I was still asleep. And her father left to get the people together and to assign them for, the assignment for work. And all of a sudden, the Gestapo and the Ukrainian police surrounded everyone, all the Jewish workers, and nobody could get away. My sister, for instance, Adele, who survived with me, she was working for this German who was the boss over the whole estate. And the father, where I slept, of my friend, called in. He said, don't let Henia out of the house because the Nazis surrounded everyone. And the moment I felt a little coldness, sort of a little nervousness around me, and they didn't know how to break it to me, the bad news. And finally, Dana says to me, Henia, I have bad news. Everyone is surrounded by the Nazi and the Ukrainian police. And my dad called me and he suggested that I should put you in the cellar during the day and see what's going to happen, if it will quiet down. So in the meantime, she said, Adele escaped. And I think one of you brothers, the older brother, who was the oldest in the family, we don't know yet, but I think that he had a chance. So during the day, I went to the cellar and I stood there. And I said to myself, as being concerned, and said, hey, I said, I'm right now by myself, everyone, and I didn't know that I will still see somebody from my family. And I stood there until it got dark, and especially when the people, this kind of people always have guards by the gate. So I realized that I have to go through a guard. So I said to myself, I cannot allow myself to go to the guard because if they will see me, they will catch me and deliver me. So I crawled under the gate. I mean, not the gate where the guard was, but I was crawling because I knew the surroundings. And I got out through the bushes and I found myself a hole like a little rat and sort of crawled out. And I ran through the fields, and I ran because where I was running, I thought, I remember Mom told me once, if any time you are in trouble or you need anything, to survive or to buy a piece of bread, I left a certain amount of money and valuables because, for instance, when you had certain good valuables, you're not allowed to have it during the Nazis. Because the silver and the fur and jewelry and so forth, you had to deliver every bit of it. But there are certain things like little things, piece of goods still from the store, and for beddings, good valuable things. I mean that the farmers could enjoy it. Some others said, in case you need a loaf of bread, that always they will give you a loaf of bread for this and this. So I was going through the fields and sideways, and I came to that farmer. And I crawling quietly into the stable where the cows and the horses were staying, and crawled in the corner. In case he comes in, I will study him and see shall I expose myself or shall I not expose myself. And I sit quietly and just thinking what to do next. And I knew that this is the end of my family, my parents, and I would never see them again. And about 2 hours later or so, I see somebody's coming quietly. And let's strike a match to see where everything is. And it just happened that was my sister Adele who is with me. So when I tried to move, she got scared. She wasn't sure if she, this is the end of her tooth. She thought, well, the person who actually belongs to, the house, the stable, will give her out. So it just happened. I said, that's me. So finally, we met. And I said, well, what's now? What shall we do now? She said, well, we'll wait until we get down, it'll get a little lighter early in the morning, and they come to feed the cows and the horses. We will expose ourselves and say, look, we will try to do something with us. Help us not to go to ghetto. The ghetto is supposed to open, let's say, in 3 or 4 days. Fair enough, they came in about, early, the farmers coming in, about 5 o'clock, and we exposed ourselves. We need your help. I understand we were told that we have a chance to be caught for labor for the Germans. They do need young girls, domestic work. If we were able to, but we need some money and some clothes because we still had some clothes what did not fit as the peasant girl. So fair enough, he gave us peasant clothing and we changed, and he said, well, this is as much as I have just for the train ticket. And we were grateful for that. And we went about walking in the snow. It was already snowing. We walked and we caught the train coming to Lvov, Lemberg. One of the guys was sitting and trying to have a cup of soup. And one of the guys says, what are the Jewish girls are doing here? Somehow he recognized us. All of a sudden we got frightened and sort of shocked. Nowhere all of a sudden somebody recognized us as Jewish girls. And he disappeared. We knew that it's going to be trouble. And a few minutes later, the Ukrainian police surrounded the whole station and looking for the 2 Jewish girls. My sister ran into, which I didn't know, but later I discovered that we met again. She went into a train, and there was in the bag was a lot of hay transported. And she dug into this hay, and all of a sudden I see somebody, an old man sitting in the corner. He was from the mountains, and they usually wear those big coats that like a cape. Mm-hmm. And I see that guy sitting in the corner. I said, my goodness, and frightened. And I ran to him. I said, I'm so cold. And I was cold because I didn't know where, because from fear, I was shivering. And I was shivering. I said, I'm so cold. I said, would you give me some warmth? I said, I would like to, cuddle up. And that poor old guy opened that big cape, and I shoved myself in practically under his arm to disappear, because I knew they're going to look for us, and to make myself invisible. And he see me trembling. He said, "Are you hungry?" I said, "Yes, I'm so hungry." And I just was choking with my tears, because I was afraid that maybe he will recognize me too. And then he had in the mountains, people didn't bake bread. They made the big like we buy it.
Cracker bread.
It's sort of like we buy that what do you call pita, the big one, because this is only one bread they could bake. And he tried to break off a piece of bread, and I choked myself with that piece of bread. And then finally, I see the police, as everybody, passport, so everyone is opening their identification card. And he sees a little guy sitting there. He passed by. I said, thank God. He passed us by, and all of a sudden we hear 2 shots. I said, my goodness, they caught my sister. And I felt my heart goes fast, and then I said, my God, I'm all alone now. That's it. That's finished. And half an hour later, they're announcing the train is going to start to move. And I'm holding on to that guy so hard, and he asked me, where are you going, kid? I said, I'm looking for work. Can you help me? He said, maybe I can help you, because my daughter is working on a farm by a priest, and maybe they need another help. I said, thank you, please, God, help me. I'm holding on to him, and I'm going on the train. Then let him go. He's my, everything what I have. That's
Your lifeline.
That's my lifeline. And we're going on the train, I know from one end, he's trying to find a place, and I'm holding on, and we're trying to sit, next to whatever, the poor people sit. And I'm sitting with him, and sitting, and looking, and hoping. And then I had with my sister a signal. If anything is, so she passed one wagon to another and trying to, to give a signal. And all of a sudden I said, let me hear again. And I said to the old man, I said, excuse me, I just want to get up and just make myself comfortable a little bit. And I'm looking, all of a sudden I see her in the third wagon. When I found her, that she is alive, I couldn't believe that I see her. What the 2 shots were, and I want to bring it up, the 2 shots, because of us, the 2 innocent girls were shot. Who they were 2 Jewish girls. They were dressed in a gypsy dresses. And because they were also killing the gypsies, there were 2 Jewish girls. They shot them. So then my sister told me that she saw them from that hay, how they shot those 2 kids. Anyways, so when I found her, I said, I just felt that I don't need him anymore, because what's going to happen to her is going to happen to me. So I said to this old gentleman, I said, sir, I want to thank you for everything, but I found somebody I know. And I said, we have another 2 or 3 hours to travel. I said, the destination where we are going, I said, and I will see you later. And being on the train, one lady spotted us. She came from near Kovno, the area where near Russia. And we were going the direction, but we were not lucky. What the purpose where we were looking for is somebody should grab us for work, for any work, just take us. But we were not lucky anymore. There was probably the end of this kind of accomplishment, whatever they were looking for the people to, young people, to get them to work. And the lady spotted us in the train, and she came to me, and she said, look, there's a lot of people in the train. You have to be very careful. Don't talk to nobody. She right away noticed that we are not Gentiles. She said, do not talk to others, because you never know who is in the train. She gave us the thing in my mind, just be careful, don't talk. And she said, it will help you. She said, here is, there was just before Christmas, Carol. She said, here's a book, and she said, and sing. And because we need singers, young singers, and she said, and I will help you. But she exactly tried to guide us and to help us to not expose yourself unnecessarily. So she said, where are you going? I said, we are looking for work, for jobs. She said, fine. She said, I might help you. So we came to Rovno. We got off from the train, and she guides us towards her home. That was a Saturday, by the way. I remember, because the next day she said, I'm going to church, and I'm going to talk to the priest. Maybe he will be able to give one for you, a job. But she didn't realize we didn't have no papers. No, nothing to show who we are, because we didn't have a chance to get papers. If we could, we will know, we probably would accomplish something before we would know that we are going for some work, and we will be hired as Gentile girls. And we slept through the night, and she went the next day, and she went to church, and she talked to the priest. He said, yes, I could use one of the girls. And then after she came home, she told us the news that you, to me, as the younger one, I get little things. I can do chores and take care of the kids, take care of the chickens, and so little things, and to help whatever the priest had, older help. And to my sister, she said, and for you, she said, I will go to the dentist. As nearby was a dentist, she said, maybe they will need. So she went, fair enough, he could use her, as a maid, whatever. But she said, now, girls, she said, I need if you have papers. I said, at the moment, we don't have any papers, but we can send for some. She said, no, I don't think, because there's so many Jewish people like get escape, and she said, you will be the first target, and we don't want that. She said, I also advise you to go back home and get the papers and come back, and you have a position as long as you want to. We couldn't quarrel, we couldn't argue about it. So I said, now what? That's another problem now. Where to? Finally, she says, look, she said, get the train. And she knew exactly, but she didn't want to spell it for us out. She didn't want to say, look, you are Jewish. You have to have papers, but we cannot keep you here because we cannot get our lives
into trouble.
So she guided us to go through the field. She said, don't go through the police because they might stop you. She said, go short, and go straight to the train and don't talk to nobody. So we realized that she's trying to tell us. We took the train back. So we realized we have nowhere to go, only go to ghetto, which the ghetto was probably already open because we fooled around 3 days on the trains. So we are coming nearby and a few kilometers away from our hometown. And because the train couldn't go any further because it was snowed in, and all the passengers had to get off before the stop line, a few kilometers before. All of a sudden, we getting off from the train, and the people getting off, and all of a sudden, one of the people what we knew very well, who was the best customers of my father's business. He was buying from us to peddle. He recognized us. And he says, the police will catch up with you. He said, you have no way to escape anymore. Why he wants us to be caught? For some reason, because he felt that we are a threat to some reason. I could not figure out why he wanted really right away we should be caught. We noticed he's going to the police, and we are on the highway, and all of a sudden we see woods, field and woods, and a lot of people getting off. So we run in between the people and getting off from the track and getting to the fields and running fast as possible to the woods. And from the woods, we are just, let's say, about 3 or 4 meters away from the fields. We could really see on the highway that the police on the motorcycles and searching for this and this kind of type of girls, the way they looked. So naturally they were going back and forth, and they couldn't see us, so they gave up. So we were sitting a whole day in the woods, waiting for the daylight, for the darkness, and to be able to get out and see what to do, because we cannot sit just in the snow in the woods and doing, and not have nothing to warm up or to because the snow was so deep that 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So it got darker. We decided to get out and to face some civilization and see what's what. So we were going maybe for 2 hours, looking for a light nearby, not in the village, but somewhere in the site by the fields, in case we have a chance to escape, that we should have the freedom to escape. So we see from a distance a light, and we are approaching that light closer, and we were already so frozen and so frightened, nowhere to go, not knowing what's going on anymore, sort of cut off. We knocked the door, and an older gentleman opens the door, and we came in, and we announced ourselves. Look, we are 2 girls who are trying to survive we lost everyone. We have nobody. Can you help us? He was a retired priest. He had 2 daughters. One was living at home and one was going still to school in gymnasium in Samper. Exactly, she was my age. And he said, children, come in. We warmed up. The old lady made us a little liquid. And he says to us, we will try to help you, but for the first couple of days, just to give you food, to bring you a little bit to a normal thinking, and then you have to decide what you want to do. So we were grateful for that. They had one home they were living was an older home, and one home before the war they were trying to build a newer home, but they had only the foundation and the walls and the roof, and they made a stable for the cows and the horses. They were, by the way, this was called a Hordenia Szlachecka, where the Szlachta was living, the better farmers, the richer farmers, more cultured ones. Mm-hmm. They were not the common farmers. They're called the Szlachta. I don't know what you call it in English, more or less.
Gentleman farmer?
What kind?
Gentleman farmer?
What sort of gentleman? But they called themselves the refined farmer, mm-hmm. the upper level, more in culture, more intelligent, richer. They possessed a lot of land. There was a small village, by the way, and everyone by the name is everyone Hordinsky, Hordinsky, Hordinsky. Just by the name, for instance, the initials were different, but the Hordinsky, everyone called himself Hordinsky for some reason. Until today, I cannot understand why. And after 3 days, they came to the stable where we lived with the cows. And the kids, what did they decide to do? She said, well, I will tell you something, and I know that's not good news, and I'm sure that you have to accept it. When your parents were taken away from that field, and the 500 people were included between your parents, she said, and your sister and brother, were taken to a prison area where they located everyone and more to it, and they kept them for a while there. And after a while, they took there was about 1,500 or some people in the prison, and they dug out 3 mass graves and the area which she explained as where it is located, by the woody area, and they are buried there. She told us for 3 solid days, she said. The grave was covered, but it was going up and down because the bodies were still alive. Some of them bodies were not dead.
So that's the torture you were talking about.
This is where my parents were tortured and the way they died in that massive grave. So we realized this happened, and she says, you have to understand that we can, from time to time, we can help you with food, but you must not tell nobody, because you know what's going to happen to us, which we realized. If they will torture you, she said, you have to take the punishment. But please, she said, I'm trying to help because we believe in humanity. But please, she said, don't give us out, no matter what. We promised, we swore on the Bible we wouldn't. So after we were going or to the somewhere in the haystacks, people didn't know about us, or in different stables where when the cold weather was, and coming back the nights where we could warm up by the cows, and away again to the woods and the fields daytime, and not let them know that we are in their stable, sort of taking cover, because we didn't want to involve them. Because if we will say, look, we are here, they don't know about us. So we didn't want to indulge them or to endanger them. We went to certain people, to other stables, trying to see that we can sneak in where the cows were eating underneath. You know, I don't know the English expression for the
Trough.
what do you call it?
Trough.
Trough. And we crawled in underneath, and this is where we were laying quietly until again the daybreak will come, and we out again in the fields, and the day again sort of we were just choosing and listening who lives, if the young people live or older people live. So we were just inquiring by ourselves who comes in early in the morning to feed the cows in the forests, and see who the people are that we could be more safer, not between young people but older people. We were going around like this in the winter times for 2 solid winters. In the summer times we were in the bushes, in the woods, in the fields, and the most safest place, what I could find myself, the most safest place was the cemetery. The cemetery, I knew that only the dead cannot hurt us, only the living can hurt us. And this is where we slept the summer times, in the cemetery. And again in the fields, where in the woods, where the devil didn't say goodnight because it was wilderness. I mean, nobody approached that area. And this was going on, and whatever we could survive on for 2 solid years is the fields where people were planting, unfortunately, my regrets, planting their potatoes or whatever they were putting in the ground, and daytime we were observing, and nighttime we went and took it out, stole it, and to made our nest wherever we knew where to, you know, that this is going to be for, let's say, for a week or 2, our food, and the most of the time was potatoes. And this was very good for us. And sometimes we actually went to the stables and woke up the cow and put a little milk in our mouth. And that was our milk, or rather whatever could survive on it. Or beet, or, you know, the cow was eating beet, so we took it out. Sometimes we took even what was prepared for the pigs. And it was still frozen. And I remember having this in my hand and the frosting in because of the temperature of my hands, so I could be able to eat that pig food, because they made sort of a mass, for the pigs to eat. That was good too for us anyway. And sometimes the chicken laid an egg, and before she could get away, the egg was already in our hand too. So this was going on for 2 solid years. This is where the most, I would say, the most tragic time in my life, losing my entire family, knowing the way my parents died. I was not aware that my brother escaped, who was working for a certain company. And one day, my sister says to me, because of still that we left that farmer, because he gave us some clothes, and there were still certain things that at least he could give us a loaf of bread. For 3 days, for 3 solid days, we could not find no food. We were I was almost swollen from hunger. She said, you're still a youngster. She said, they cannot hurt you. She said, why don't you go to that Moskviak? His name was Moskviak. She said, he would not think even of hurting you. She said, maybe he'll give us a loaf of bread. She said, just how that mother told you that this was left, and to give you some, just knock the window. And it was winter time. I mean, it was very, very cold and snow. And it was that full cold. So I said, okay, I will take my chance. So I walked out from the stable, and walking in the moon was so bright. It was just like the lights around me. And I'm walking, nobody, a soul on the street. I'm just listening to my footsteps, the echo of my footsteps. And what my footsteps were? A pair of left galoshes, which I found it, and my dress was stolen from a
clothesline.
They didn't have a clothesline. They had like a fence, a potato sack, and that potato sack was my dress. But because it was clean, so I didn't dare to have a clean sack on me, so I had to take dirt and make it dirty, because in case I'm spotted from when I go to steal some food. All of a sudden I see a shadow when I walk. I said, my God, that's the end of me. And I do hide behind a tree, and it was by a river. And I see closer and closer, and I look, and that was my brother, and he sees a woman, and from he saw me, but he thought in his mind that the ghetto was already established, that his wife had a chance to get away from ghetto, escape from the ghetto. So he thought, my goodness, because she was surrounded by the area, she was familiar with the area, so she was thinking that maybe she heard that he is alive. So he is approaching me, and all of a sudden I recognized, because if you had an outfit and a fur was on the jacket, you had to give away the jacket and you remained with the slacks. So he had sort of like one outfit, and I recognized his slacks because the moonlight was so bright. And I jumped up from behind the tree and I ran to him. He couldn't believe it. Then the next day I said, look, we are there and there. I would like you to come and visit us. But naturally at night time that nobody should see you. He said, of course. I said, how in the world would you? He said, he said, where I was working, I have a certain hiding place, and one person knows only about me. And I have bread. And he said, I'll bring you tomorrow bread. Excuse me, I'm jumping, pardon me. When I was going for this piece of bread, this was already returned back with no accomplishment, with no bread. I was threatened. I came to that guy, to that Mosquiak, and I said, I knocked on the window, and he asked me, who is this? And the windows were frozen, he couldn't see me. I said, this is Henia Tziffer. My name is Tziffer. I said, would you please give me a piece of bread, because my mom told me that she left some possessions here. Would you please give me a piece of bread or a loaf of bread, because I need for 3 days. He says to me, I will advise you to get away from here as soon as you can, because I will call the police if you would not get away. So I said, just give me a crumb of bread, just one slice of bread, because I'm so hungry. He said, get away. So I realized that he means it. So I got away, and this is where I met my brother. And I told him what happened. And this was about February, month of February. And I told him what happened to Mr. Mosquiak, how he treated me, and he didn't give me a piece of bread. And he said, look, I bring you tomorrow bread. Just tell me where you are. I told him where we are. He brought us the next day bread and milk. And he realized that the conditions where we live.
Okay.
The conditions where we live. And he said, I would never settle for it. I cannot. We begged him to stay with us.
Right.
And he said, I will never settle for this kind of a life, because he said, I cannot be just sort of caved in a little cave. And this, he said, I cannot do that. I have to have a little freedom. And he was walking in the woods, because for some reason, in the daytime, he was the woody man, because he needed the freedom. He felt that nobody will touch him, nobody will do any harm to him, because he felt that he didn't hurt nobody, and people were good to him, because he did so much goodness during the time where he was working for this company, that a lot of people appreciate him so much that they can give him anything what he wants, even his life. So this Mosquiak, this guy, I was there to ask for a piece of bread, and all of a sudden he met him 3 days later in the woods. And my brother felt so sore at him. He said, how dare you, that my baby sister came to ask for a piece of bread, and you refused her, you chased her away. And from then on, he tried to catch him, or rather, to betray, and he reported to the police that he is alive, and his sister who is alive, and we have to get rid of him. That now, because of him, and then we will be in trouble in case they survive. So it took them 3 weeks, the police and him alone, to catch him. They caught him. They were beating him up. We were told, we didn't know, because we were waiting for him. and he never showed up. We didn't know what happened. So after our liberation, when we were liberated, we were told what happened to him. They were beating him slowly, beating him to tell, torturing him, the police, torturing him to tell what, where we are and to tell about our existence. He didn't want to tell them, naturally, he didn't tell. They were cutting him slowly, piece by piece, section by section. He couldn't talk anymore, because he couldn't talk anymore. They threw him in a cellar, where the potatoes are, to give him an hour's time to think about, because then he didn't only have pieces of an organ. A tongue was still left, 1 ear was gone, one hand was gone, whatever they could cut him. So we were told that he was so cut to pieces, he didn't talk anymore. So finally they undressed him, they digged out a hole, they took him on a wagon, empty wagon, naked, and to the woods, and dug out a hole, and still whatever the pieces, what he actually still belonged to him, the torn pieces, what he still was wearing, they still gave him a bullet, which he didn't need any more bullets. And they covered him up with this little belongings what he had, and that was it. When we came out on the open, they showed us where his grave was. Whatever, there was nothing left. It was just I cannot even tell you in words what was left to put him in a casket and bury him. That was the most tragic side what I seen in my life. What happened to my brother. And that mosque, after we were liberated, we came and we faced him. We called the NKGB. We told the witnesses, some witnesses, showed him what he did. I don't know what happened. He did stand trial, and they probably sent him to Siberia, the Russians, after our liberation. And that's what, after, when we came to our hometown, we found that what our home, we had a home.
How were you? How did you know it was okay to come out of the woods finally?
When we were sitting in the cellar, there's someone, you're skipping. We were sitting in the people's,
the priest. The whole village evacuated. We didn't have nowhere to go because, those two shadows, this is not human beings anymore, because we didn't look like human beings. We were downstairs in the cellar, and the Germans came in. We heard the Russians are coming, and we heard the noise of the Katyushas and the guns and so forth. And the Germans were in their home where they lived, and we were just, let's say, 5 meters away from the home, and that where the stable was. And we went downstairs because the Katyushas were flying. We were in the cellar, and one German opens that top, and it was about 6 or 7 stairs down. And it was dark, and he came down, and he says, "Oh, don't know whether," and he got out again. When he was one step down, he will see it. He was just glued to the wall, just like skeletons glued to the wall, because if we will just expose ourselves just a half an inch, he probably was here. But for some reason, we were so flat to the wall, because not even a breath. Then one step more, he will see us. But there's a miracle. There is somebody above us. And he decided not to go one step down. He went down, he closed the door. And 3 days they were fighting in that area. And then in the evening, we decided not to stay anymore there. So my sister crawled through, the patrol was going back and forth, and my sister tried to crawl to a little window in the cellars they have, and she pulled me out, and we went into ran away through through the streets and went into a garden. I was sitting in the garden, hiding in the big corn field, and my sister felt that's not safe enough in the garden. She said, "Let's cross the street and let's go. There's a stack of hay. We'll go stack." I said, "I cannot go." He said, "You go, and this is the truth." I said, "If they didn't catch you, then I will come. But the meantime, the Katyushas were firing, and I couldn't, the three, what I was in the garden, the three turned over and buried me half alive. Mm-hmm. I was glad that I am buried half alive. Why? Because in case something, somebody might come to the garden to dig something, they might see me and they might kill me regardless. So nobody came because of the firing, and the Germans came to the garden to dig out some potatoes, and they were talking. They were talking that all of a sudden the Russians are coming closer, and 5 o'clock in the evening they will pull back. This was my signal that the Russians are coming. They said the Russians are coming. That was the Russians are coming for me. Next day, the first patrol came, and one little guy, a Russian, I don't know if he was Russian or not, and I saw him. I crawled. I couldn't walk because I didn't have the strength to walk. And I was listening, and I spoke Russian that time, and I was listening. I hear the Russian language, and I crawl. He sees me crawling to him, and I embraced him, and I was on all my fours, and he was looking at me like a worm, and he couldn't believe this is a human being, because I didn't look like a human being. And I embraced him, and he says to me in Russian, "It's too bad that you survived." And then I didn't know what to say. I said, "My goodness," I said, "he can kill me right now." And a few minutes later, another patrol came, and an officer came. And I was sitting and crying. And he came down from his horse, and he said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "I'm a survivor. I'm a liberation. I am liberated by one of the soldiers. And I'm Jewish." And I said, "I went through Hitler." I said, he told me that I'm too bad to survive." He said, "Which one? Who?" It was a Jewish officer. And I told him that my sister somewhere, and a few minutes later, they surrounded the whole village, and my sister came down. And this is where we united. And he gave orders to one of the people to give us a bath, to give us food slowly, he said. And he said, "I will come back." I never saw him again, because they probably, for some reason, he couldn't, or he was killed. This is the way we got liberated by the Russians. And that was the minute of my life of feeling alive, feeling liberated. And he says to me, "It's too bad that you survived."
You were saying what happened when you went back to your home.
I went back to my home. The Ukrainian possessed. 1 minute? Mm-hmm. The Ukrainian possessed our home. And naturally we saw to it. We couldn't do nothing with this house because it's in the Russian zone. But we see to it that he is not using this house. So we probably, I don't know where he got wind up, or in Siberia or where, because probably if they would not try to take away our home earlier than they're supposed to take it, probably there was a chance maybe somebody could still survive.
And then you went on to a DP camp after that?
No. It still was in our hometown for 6 months. And after that, we went to Krakow. For Krakow, we had another beautiful experience. The underground surrounded us. And there was a lot of killing again.
Killing of Jews?
Of Jews.
Did anyone in your family survive besides you and your sister?
That was finished. Everyone was 135 people in the family. Cousins, uncles, aunts, and sort of.
And just the two of you?
Just two of us.
Thank you.